Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Community Platforms. What does it mean to be British? What are the values? What are we talking about? Is it about values? Is it about a culture? As somebody who called in to say that they want us to be like them. We were not able to differentiate or explain who are them and who are us. But we believe, or certainly the conversation has alluded to tonight, is that it's a very politicized argument. Tahir, let me come back to you when we were discussing and talking about how is that going to impact those people. Let me give you an example. You have someone who's got a visa. The visa expires on the 3rd of October. He hasn't got his level 3. Entry 3. What does he do?
Well,
Where does he stand?
unfortunately, if he's too close to the expiry date on his visa, he will have to apply for an extension. That's the advice we give.
Is there a cost involved in that?
Well, yeah, there's about £550, £560, and then he would have to, at some point, pass the entry 3 level in English, as well as passing the life in the UK. So, unfortunately, that's what students who would have, who need to submit their application after the 1st of October will have to do. My advice would be anybody coming into the country on spouse visas or on or indeed students who want to apply for British citizenship, and that's not just spouse visas, it could be asylum applicants and so on and so forth. Our advice is for learners to really start enrolling soon as they arrive into the country, because we advise them, once you've managed to pass the entry 3, that will help you to understand some of the contents in the life in the UK. At least then you can focus all your energy in preparing yourselves for the test.
Right. Let's take this call. Sister Zara from Birmingham. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, sister, you have a question or a comment?
A comment, sorry, I've missed most of your show, but I saw the topic, so I just wanted to say, you asking, like, what is it to be British? You would think it's an issue of identifying where you live, but really, to me, it seems it's an issue of values and integration. So if I explain myself, it seems like, especially minorities who live in Britain, they're facing more and more challenges to prove they're worthy to be called British. So, like, for example, when we look in 2004, when the citizenship was launched for immigrants, Life in the UK Handbook, it mentioned, and to quote, it would include vital citizenship questions such as, what is around in a pub? What is Guy Fawkes Day? Do you sign a Valentine's Day card? These are questions that were supposed to represent the core values of British identity. You would assume that people coming to live in this country would learn about the core values of society, how we would behave, what is the social conduct. But to me, it just seems like pushing people to accept a certain viewpoint and values. And, obviously focusing on Muslims, when, say, first-generation Muslims came to Britain, a lot of them did adopt their lives to adhere to British life, but today we see more and more Muslims adhering to Islam first. They're prioritising Islam, which is, obviously Islam is a deen, it's not a religion, it's fine. And this question keeps coming up, can Muslims really integrate? Can they accept our values? Can they fit in? But the point is, to me, it just seems we're facing as Muslims a battle of values. We're labelled as extremists, fundamentalists, Islamists. If we take our values, our morals and solutions from Islam, but the point is, what I wanted to say to listeners, and maybe you could discuss it amongst yourselves, is the fact that we can't really compromise on this, because being a Muslim and adhering to Islam is an identity which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and we cannot be afraid to preserve or protect that. And that doesn't mean, that we can't be law-abiding citizens of this country. There is absolutely no issue in that, but the point is, when it comes down to values, there is no compromise. So that's my opinion, and maybe you'd like to discuss it, I don't know.
You're always a breath of fresh air, Zara. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. We often get Zara calling in, right. But she's lovely, to the point. And we agree with you. Well, I certainly agree with you. But Zara's mentioned that if you're talking about, let's just take an example that is a Muslim community. And she's absolutely right. We cannot compromise on certain situations. I will not be able to normalize that going to the pub or, sharing alcohol is a value that I can relate to. And are we talking about values? Are we saying that some of our values must be diluted?
I thought that was a very interesting comment, and I don't think that it's about either or. And I think that actually values, a lot of the values that Muslims have that are associated with Islam are shared across religions. So, we can't make any particular claim for some values such as generosity, loving thy neighbor, respecting other people's property. I don't think that these values belong to particular groups.
No.
So there's a lot of values that are shared across groups. And absolutely, why should one compromise on her religious beliefs? And the example that Zara gave, it's true, in that older Life in the UK book, there was a section on what to do in a pub if someone assaults you or something. And there again, going back to the question, who do you think the audience is? I said, they think that the audience is someone who would go to a pub, but it's not expecting that because we learn what to do in a pub. I mean, I never use that information. I never go to pubs either. I don't think that it's expecting that everybody who becomes a British citizen has to go to a pub. I think we need to be careful to, not to oversimplify here. These books are designed in ways that will always be selective. What's interesting is that what's not in there. So how do you behave in a mosque?
Exactly.
Why is that not in there?
Exactly.
So that's one question that could be asked.
Or what is Eid?
What
and
is
what do people
Eid?
do in Ramadan?
Exactly.
Exactly. And if this,
So, so it's selective. So you're right, Zara. It is selective about particular kinds of values, particular forms of cultural practices. So, a pub is not going to a pub is not necessarily a value. It's just associated with Britishness. It's a bit stereotypical.
But is it really? Or is it a class thing?
It's stereotypical. It's a stereotype of Britishness. If you travel around the world, there will be the stereotype of the British pub.
But it isn't also associated with a certain class, because you may have a wine bar and not a pub.
Yeah.
For a certain class. If you were to go to the capital and Sloane Square, you might find a nice wine bar.
Oh yes, but if you go to the city in London, you'll have a lot of pubs.
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's very gendered. It's a very gendered space,
Yes.
not only
Yeah,
class,
absolutely.
but very gendered.
Yes,
The wine bar,
exactly.
you'll have more women. The pub,
Yeah,
you'll have more men.
yes, exactly.
So, but all this to say that I don't think that people should compromise.
No, I don't think so.
But I don't think that we should make any claims about who owns these values, right?
I think they transcend every faith and every culture.
Yeah, some of them
to
do.
To be a good human being,
Exactly.
to be a good neighbor. These are values that we certainly, and I as a Muslim, believe that are God-given to all, not a particular community. When you're teaching your students, when they come in for all these cultural values, and then you're giving this input, do you teach them about pubs and how to behave in a pub?
Well, we don't actually teach them about pubs.
Or
but
maybe it's about downtime that you did.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that. But what I would say is, and I think the point that Zara also raised was, I think she used the word something about what does it mean to be British. Well, to be absolutely honest with you, I've lived pretty much all my life here, and if you was to ask me what does it mean to be British, what I would say, well, not an awful lot, to be honest with you.
You mean you don't eat fish and chips?
Well, I do eat fish and chips, but if you was to slightly change the question and ask me what does it mean to be a good citizen?
Yes.
Now that changes the whole, if you like, debate, because I would then say, well, respecting people, taking responsibility, being, and that does really change the whole debate slightly somewhat. So I don't think it's helpful when we use terms like, well, what does it mean to be British? Because
wasn't it Gordon Brown that first used it?
I think, well, he said something about British jobs for British people or something, and it's
what
that
does
sort of
it mean to
rhetoric,
be British,
really. Well,
isn't
yeah,
it?
absolutely, and I think that sort of rhetoric doesn't really help the debate. But
did it want to help?
John Major asked the question. I mean, it's a perennial issue that doesn't really dominates the press. Politicians ask that question regularly. It's a perennial issue that's been around in Britain for decades. But I agree with Tahir. It doesn't really. We still don't know.
And just talking on this point, I remember reading somewhere very, very recently. I think David Cameron used the words that Britain is no longer a soft touch for immigration, but. This system's in place. It's just scaremongering rhetoric that feeds the far-right groups when you use language like that. There is a system. If anybody wants to come as a refugee...
But it's not just Cameron, is it?
Well, absolutely not.
It's not just Cameron. We've had Jack Straw. MP of this town used that kind of language, didn't we? Do you remember the going back to the Vale?
Yes.
You know, and when he used that the language, and he was appealing to certain kind of a crowd to win back that white working class vote, and he did.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just not that I'm speaking on behalf of Cameron. I wouldn't, I wouldn't aspire to do that, for goodness sake. But the fact is, we have seen all politicians abuse the system.
Yes, absolutely. And my point, I mean, if I can just make one more point. Again, I think I was driving to work this morning, I was listening to the radio, and I think they were saying something about social housing for immigrants. I think they were saying that they were going to stop social housing for new immigrants coming into the country. But if you actually look at statistical data, there's only 9% of social housing that goes to immigrants.
Yeah.
And there is a system in place where you make an application, it gets assessed, it gets, and people make a decision. You can't jump the queue. But the perception out there amongst the indigenous communities is that immigrants are coming into this country, cannot speak the language, are taking the houses, are burdening the NHS service, and unemployment is high because there's no jobs for indigenous
And we have to blame the immigrants.
And we have to find somebody to blame.
Exactly.
So when the country is in an financial mess, you have to.
You need to look for the
politicians tend to find
scapegoat.
people who they can blame, and in this case, unfortunately, it's immigrants coming
Well,
to this country.
we have to do something about that. Let's take this call. Assalamu alaikum, Adam from Preston.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hello there.
Assalamu alaikum. Do you have a comment or do you have a question?
Hello. May I speak to the Tahir? Tahir?
Well, he can hear you, Adam, so speak up.
Hello. My question is, why is the fee? It's very, very expensive to go on this course. Why is it very expensive?
Why is it very expensive? Is that your
It's a very
question,
good
Adam?
question.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's a very good question. And when I went into ESOL teaching almost 12 years ago, these courses were subsidised by government funding. But unfortunately, the government have decided these courses used to be, in some cases, being made available for people who were on benefits free. But unfortunately, because of the current economic climate, I guess one of the things that the government have done is stop funding ESOL provision. So unfortunately, everything that's organisations do have to be full cost is what basically students do have to pay for it. But it's unfortunate. The question you raise is a very good question. But with the current economic situation, the government almost 3 years ago decided that they were no longer going to fund mainstream ESOL courses.
Well, I mean, there's such a difficult decision. I'm trying to think of what I heard, what I read somewhere, where the government was investing in something. It was £50 million, and I can't remember. And I suddenly thought, if they had invested that in simply ESOL classes and create that, I'll give an example why I think. You get a lot of women who are suffering from, Asian women I'm talking about, who suffer from whether it's depression or mental health. It's very rife in Asian women. And I have found, actually, if you were to get them to come out of the homes and go to English classes and to learn, they are better citizens. They get involved in their civic duties. They integrate better. But I just wonder, Anne-Marie, whether the government really wants integration.
Well, it does beg that question, and I think it's true. Language and access to a class serves many purposes, and if those who don't speak the English had access to English language classes without tying it to citizenship, just giving them access, and it does exist already. Migrant workers can access different versions of ESOL classes, and they don't have to tie it to citizenship. But for those who are on particular visas that they need to, get indefinite leave to remain, so that they can stay here, but they have to take those classes, it adds that extra pressure. If it were made available And if the government put its money where its mouth is, you want the immigrants to speak English, well, subsidize it.
Yeah.
Make that, it is an important resource. It's not an assimilation tool. It's not the only way through integration. It's not the only means of integration, but it certainly helps. It needs to be made available.
And it
there
creates
are many people out there, many organizations that want to provide that service, but they don't have the resources to do it. Or some colleges are bursting at the seams because they have long waiting lists, but they don't have enough resources to...
And you know, English language is a beautiful language. Any language is a beautiful, because through language comes culture. You learn history, you learn the way of life. You know, I love reading. And through reading, you will learn. But if the pressure is on because that I am only going to learn this for the sake of assessment, then that's gone.
Yeah.
You know, you're learning because you have to pass an exam.
Exactly.
And not to enjoy the
Not
language.
to enjoy and move,
Exactly.
You have to pass exams to progress a level,
Exactly.
like any form of education. But it should be made available.
So who's advising these people? Who's creating this? I mean, obviously it's the government, right? It's the government. I just wonder, the person who designed this, did he pass the test?
Well, I don't think he did.
Oh, what a shame. Isn't that news for us?
I don't think he did. But again, I think, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't think the government do a particularly good job at consulting organisations that do the grassroots level work in ESOL. So I think, going back to your question, I think the person who designed the booklet did fail it. I think there needs to be more consultation with at grassroots levels, and I don't think that exists, and I think that's something that the government really need to do more of. And if they do it, certainly nobody's ever contacted me or our organisation.
But who's going to tell the government, you see? I mean, people like you are at the forefront, aren't you? You're actually dealing with this on a daily basis. Why are you not contacting the government offices or the appropriate office to say, excuse me, we think you might be making a mistake?
Well, in fact, we have, where we've been invited for at meetings to discuss, very rarely we do get invited, but were once or twice over the past 2 years where I have been invited, I make it absolutely clear that this is not the right way to be going, it's not the right direction we're heading. Bring back free ESOL classes, but unfortunately with the current economic climate, we are told time after time that it's just not possible with the climate we're in at the moment.
Could academia help? I mean, do Mr. Cameron needs the academics to do some sort of a report or something? I mean, if you remember, Ted Cantle did a report in Blackburn where he told us that Blackburn was a divided town. We could have told him that, but the fact is...
parallel lives.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're an academic.
I think you're right, Tahir, that the government does have a number of advisory boards. They do wide consultations when they devise a new policy or whatever field. Sometimes academics are involved. Sometimes academics can get commissioned to do particular studies and to report back to the Home Office. But then they do with it what they want. So yes, we can interfere, and but
who's going to listen?
Then it's property of the government. They do with the study what they want, and they use the data that they want from the studies that we provide for them.
Okay, we have Zara Beta. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry.
Assalamu alaikum. Not at all. Welcome back.
I just wanted to come back on a point. I don't think maybe I made myself clear. Sorry. Basically, your guest, I'm so sorry, I don't know her name. She was saying, obviously, about, it doesn't mean that everyone's got to go to a pub, etc. And obviously, I accept that. That's understandable. Of course, they don't expect everyone to go to a pub. But what I was really trying to get at was the fact that it's a battle of values. So if maybe I can just give you a quote. In the Civitas report, The West, Islam and Islamism, there's actually a quote that said, it's not enough for the vast majority of decent, peaceful, law-abiding Muslims to renounce terror in principle, including all terrorist events. If they choose to live in Western, liberal, democratic societies, they must accept the values of liberal democracy, just like Jews, Sikhs, Hindus and many others have done for years. But obviously, as Muslims, Islam is a way of life for us, so we refer to Islam for every little thing. And when we have documents and legislation like anti-terror legislation, preventing violent extremism. Contest 2, which actually classes many core Islamic beliefs, such as believing that sovereignty belongs to Allah, obviously we don't believe in homosexuality. You're actually defined under law as an extremist. And it also, this is what I was saying, like this whole, it's like this scaremongering, this intimidation. If you really want to be British, you must accept what we accept. And that is, sorry, maybe I didn't get that across the first
You did.
time, but that is what I wanted to point out.
You did. We need to get you on platform.
Can I ask what you were quoting from?
Sorry?
Can I ask what you were quoting from?
That was the Civitas report, The West, Islam and Islamism.
Thank you.
It came out some time ago, I think. Zara Beta, thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. I think what she was trying to say, and
I totally agree. And there is intimidation is the right word, and some of the things that I've been looking at with regards to community cohesion, for example, and it's a huge industry of documents and policy documents that have been produced in designing community cohesion. And what's striking is there that the Muslims are targeted, are named as sources of problem and potential terrorism and so on. So you're right, that there is forms of intimidation there that we need to address, and we need to.
How do we address? I mean, the fact is that we know that this book is, in a way, very indirectly telling us dilute a certain form of value, okay? We know that. The fact is that we know that. Where do we go? If we don't do the test, then you don't get the citizenship, you cannot stay in the country. It's catch-22. What do we do? How do we fight this? I mean, do I want to read this book? No. I'm not interested. Would I be interested in passing this? I don't believe that this book will make me a better citizen. It doesn't.
But people who do the test don't necessarily do it for that reason. They don't do it to say, "Oh, I want to become I want the passport." That's what a lot of people tell me. They want the passport.
But the government needs to understand that by reading this book, we do not become a good citizen.
We already are.
Right? I tell you what makes us a good citizen, or certainly the people who are the Muslims, is to understand their faith better, because everything within their faith makes them the better person. That you look after your neighbor, that you do not harm the next person, that you mustn't eat if your neighbor has not eaten. That's what makes a good citizen, doesn't it?
And and you respect the other.
Exactly.
And you respect differences as well.
So what can you do? I have an academic here, and I've got a professional who does this. How can you help us to get this through to the government? Because obviously they're not in the thinking mode. How do we get there to say, this isn't going to work, you're wasting money? Give us the money, put the money where it should really go. Provide ESOL classes for those people, and then teach them culture through the language.
I mean, I guess protests, a peaceful protest is one way. I mean, lobbying. But I mean, it's a very good question you ask, and my honest answer is that I'm not too sure.
The ESOL Action Group is a very powerful.
Is there such a thing?
There's an ESOL Action Group, and they're quite a strong lobby. And it was cited in one of the newspaper articles today, precisely around this issue of the new law in October. So they were citing them. But I can't find I was looking for that newspaper article. So it is quite a vocal action group. So these pressure groups are lobbying the government, or giving them evidence of what needs to be done, what needs to be changed. I don't think that we'll get rid of this. I suppose what we could ask is that the government just says what it's really for. And then, because it's not, I don't think that people who devised this really, I mean, some people who were part of the devising of the initial test, Bernard Crick was the leader of that committee, who set up the Life in the UK test and so on. And their rationale was to, it was part of a journey, so it wasn't an end point. Their rationale was that Life in the UK would be a way for new arrivals, new immigrants to learn about the UK, but as a stepping stone into learning more. That spirit, according to him and his committees, and people have written about what's happened since, they find that spirit's been lost.
Okay, let's take this call. Adam from Sussex. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, hello. I hope you can hear me. I'm having a little bit of a job to hear you.
Well, we can hear you perfectly, Adam.
Good. Okay, thank you. I think your program is very good, that people are discussing these things, which you don't really find in society in general. I do have just one or 2 points. I won't carry on. First of all, I think that it's very difficult to define what it is to be British these days, because I think the government, correct me if I'm wrong or you disagree, is very much on getting a secular state, secularising this, secularising that, which I find rather... I do believe in God and His love and mercy. I'm not a Muslim. I think, first of all, whatever one's religion, I know you said you can't compromise, and I would agree. And equally on mine, I wouldn't want to compromise. And I find it very difficult with things like the local hospital chapel has been changed from a Christian chapel into an interfaith chapel when the cross has to be covered. Because I was told it offends certain people, which I find quite hurtful. I find that un-British. I do think that some past events have... I hate the term Islamophobia, because I do think people are free to voice their opinions. I think some past events like Muslims burning British flags, etc., and when our forces come home with the signs up, baby murders, etc., etc., I think this is unacceptable. I don't think that is British to do that if people are living here. At the same time, I will say that whatever one's religion, or even if one doesn't have one, we're all, whether we like it, children of God, and should have respect for each other and love for each other as created by Almighty God. But I do think that really the Muslim... I hope I don't sound critical, but to be British, I think one must be aware of the past culture of this land, not compromise, but certainly not become exclusive or make... if there are anti-British comments made, or I happen to be very pro-American too, that sort of thing, to actually apologise. I think it's British to apologise,
Yes.
And say sorry. One last comment. I don't think it was helpful on one of your channels recently. There was a comment made by a Muslim lady that at least 9/11 has got people speaking about Islam. Now, comments like that really, really don't help. But as for people's wear or what they're wearing, I mean, one shouldn't compromise. It's often said about the hijab, etc., but as a Christian...
Adam, can I just ask you, was it a program on this channel?
No, it was on another channel, Alibate.
Sorry, can't do anything about that one.
Yeah,
But
and
keep
also
watching, Adam.
Yeah, and also a young man, very, very pleasant indeed. But he was asking the question of the other members of the panel, why are we Muslims so violent? But I was going to make one last quick comment, and I've forgotten what it is now. I just think it's quite... Oh, yes, the young lady, Zara. Who phoned in. She mentioned homosexuality. Now, I mean, in this country, and I am a Christian, has been by psychiatrists, medics, etc., written off as being insane years ago. If I am a father, a lone father, I always put this to Almighty God in my prayers. One doesn't ask to be homosexual. the young children at school have suffered because of it, bullying, etc., homophobia. It is a terrible thing to have seen somebody suffer from that. That gay people are children of God too, and should be loved as such. I mean, one can vary on one's views on whether it should be put into practice practically, but I will say to that young lady, Zara, as a father, if one of my children came to me later on and said, Dad, I'm gay, and the other one was heterosexual, I've gone through this in my prayers, etc., and I know priests too who would agree with me, would find it very hard to say to the gay one, well, I'm sorry, but you've got to live a celibate life. And to the other one, you can actually get married and have children. So nobody's saying, compromise your beliefs, etc. But I would disagree with that young lady. Lots of research has been done. I work in the arts with gay people who are very polite, etc. I'd rather speak to a gay person than, if you know what I mean, a skinhead, if you know what I mean.
Adam, you have raised some very important points, and please keep watching. We're going to respond to some of those points that you have raised. We're just going to go for a short break, but it's lovely to be able for you to contribute, and we're delighted to have you on our channel. Thank you so much. We're just going to take a short break, but don't go away. We'll be back within the next few minutes. Thank you so much. I just wanted to respond to something that Adam said just before break, that he's offended because we cover the cross when Muslims go to pray in a certain prayer room. Adam, just very quickly, Muslims are not allowed to pray in front of any icon. So it's not to cause offense, but it's for them to fulfill their obligation to pray. And I work at a cathedral. And when I'm praying, there are certain crosses that I would cover up. Not because I want to be offensive to my colleagues, but simply because I have to fulfill my obligation to my God. So I think that is understanding that we need, that it is not meant to be offensive. But I hope that clarifies, and I hope that you'll join us at some other time. I think Adam raised certain issues, and we were talking during the break. The one word that comes to mind that you picked up was respect.
Respect, yes.
Will this book teach me respect?
I think we shouldn't come back to this book all the time. We shouldn't fetishize it.
No.
But I think Adam, because he spoke with a lot of respect.
Yes, he did indeed.
Expressed some concerns, which we have to do, but with respect. And I think that is one of the issues that is a value that is not unique to any particular religion or culture, but the issue of respecting each other, human beings as human beings, whether you're Muslim, atheist, gay, working class, multimillionaire, wherever you're from, get to know each other and respect the other as a human being, as a fellow human being.
And you need to create relationship, don't you?
You need to create a relationship.
How can you have a serious, difficult conversation? You can't zap people on a bus stop.
No, of course.
You've got to create that relationship, don't you?
Yes.
And to create relationship, you have to respect each other.
Yes.
There have to be boundaries.
There has to be boundaries. Yes, there has to be absolutely boundaries and modes of operating in terms of you respect each other's view, you listen to each other, and then you say, well, with respect, this is what I think. But I think that's one of the things that you don't learn from a textbook. You
Certainly
learn
not
from
this one.
everyday life.
No, you won't.
You
It's a lived
learn- but
experience.
It is a lived experience, and it's also an experience. I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to talk to all your neighbors. You don't have to. It's something that develops in your workplace, in the people you befriend, in your extended family, or your local community, whether it's your ethnic community or a much more mixed community, whatever. But it's something that you learn in everyday life. It's not something that you can be taught, whether it's a citizenship test or at school. I mean, in the citizenship curriculum at school, that's an element of it, as far as I know.
I just get the feeling that it's a very American way of doing things, where you've got to have ceremonies to become a citizen, because that's what they did in America. When I was young, millions of years ago, and I lived in a country called Pakistan, my neighbor was an English lady, and we used to call her auntie.
Oh yeah.
And it never occurred to us that she was a Christian and that we were Muslim. We respected each other. And she used to make Christmas cake, and we would be allowed to go and sit with her, and we were friends. We never had a problem. My first teacher at a school was a Christian lady. There was never an issue. We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum. Brother Bashir from Leicester. Oh, I'm so sorry. Do dial again. We have about 5 minutes left, so please do dial again and get through. I think the line was dropped. And yet there wasn't never an issue. There was never a problem. She respected us. We were very naughty kids in those days, of course. We would climb up the mango tree and just, very naughty. But there was that respect. Respect that we were different. And the differences were not to be hidden.
No, exactly.
They were to be respected.
Exactly.
And we never had a problem.
It's awful when you have to start hiding who you are.
Exactly.
It's awful.
And I didn't have to read that book. I didn't have to read that book.
No, exactly.
Last few minutes, Tahir, what are we going to do? How are we going to help our students to get through this and the new legislation? What is those last few minutes advice that we can give to some of those people who will be watching and thinking, goodness me, that's a tough one?
I mean, obviously, I'd like more time to be able to give a
2-3 minutes then.
Okay. I mean, as a tutor, I would say...
Just before you start, let's take our last caller. Muhammad Ali from London. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sister, and your other sister as well, and brother Hussain. Hello.
Hello, we are here. We're listening to you.
I didn't hear the wa alaikum salam,
No, I beg your pardon.
Okay.
We probably didn't say it. That was very wrong. It was wa alaikum assalam.
Quickly, what I can do, three of you, and I'd like to give my email address, and quickly I make a comment, and because you don't have a time, is my email address is labbaik, LABBAYK, labbaik@hotmail.co.uk. So we're talking about the English language barrier. So, sister, I don't think so we can achieve that way. I think we can give the government to advise if they want to be the language barriers, they want to break that one, only the way they give us Pakistan or third world, the old computer, and the solar. If they provide us Pakistan, the two things, and sister, I can give you the guarantee within 5 years between British and Pakistan on the third world, the language barrier will be finished. And then we will understand each other. Then we make the dialogue. There will be many questions raised. So that way, the only solution, you and me, British government, and you and me, we give to the third world, and mostly the Pakistan, India, old computer and the solar power, because we don't have electric over there. So we can build we have an institution, and we can more build the institution to help the community. And I give you the guarantee, within 5 years, I have I can say something, because you don't have time. If you send me the email, I can more explain to you how can we work and how does it work.
You're very kind. Thank you so much for your phone call. We're very grateful. Jazakallah khair. Allah Hafiz. Well, that's, a solution has been provided. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I mean, as a tutor, I'm bound to...
And how spring special for that to be the spring.
Very temperamental chef became so furious when his very fussy customer complained that his potato chips were too thick that he grabbed a knife and he chopped them very, very, very wafer thin.
I'm bound to say that I would encourage learners to speak English at home where it's appropriate. Try and practice the language, because language, whether it's French or Italian or German or English, it's acquired. You know, you only pick up language by speaking to people, by being in an environment where language is being practiced, and that's the only way you will improve your language. You know, so that's the first advice I would give. The second advice I would give is people who know their visas are finishing after October the 1st is to really start the ball rolling as soon as possible, because if you leave it last minute, it's going to be a financial burden. And of course, it's going to cause a lot of stress and a lot of misery to try and memorize the life in the UK book contents. And
can we give do you have a number that you can give out to people, especially those who may be listening in Blackburn, certainly, or locally who may be interested, that may be in that situation? Do you have a number that you can give out?
Yes, they can contact me on 01254, that's the Blackburn code, and the number is 433736. Sorry, that's 433736.
Thank you. And if anybody wants that number again, just give us a call, and I'm sure that we will be able to help you. Anne-Marie, we're very grateful for you to come all that way.
Thank you very much.
In this terrible weather. Any last message to our listeners? How to be a good citizen?
Oh, well, I think how to be a good citizen. I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, are very good citizens already. Keep doing what you're doing. And yeah.
No, we are very grateful that you came and shared some of your expertise with us. The fact is that to be a good citizen, it has to be a lived experience. We have to know who is the neighbour without diluting our own values, whatever those values may be, but respecting the other. As Adam said, that the word respect, and of course we understand that word respect. As a Muslim, I know that I cannot harm anyone. It will go against my faith, my culture, my upbringing. It will also, how do we interact with people who are different? And of course, you look at instances where we have, problems, where maybe a lot of people coming from Pakistan, India, or the subcontinent don't have an opportunity to interact. And I think that's what is so important, that is needed. We need to interact people of different communities. Let me give you an example. If you have someone who goes to a school which is wholly monoculture, so it could be an Asian culture, it could be a white culture, and if the children do not interact with others, where are they going to learn from? Where will they learn from? Yes, there's certain cultural values that we will not tolerate, that we will not appreciate. Zara mentioned that we can't go to pubs, but nobody's asking us to go to pubs. Nobody's asking us to take up smoking. These are the values that we learn at home. I know that it's a difficult, that we're living in difficult times, but maybe you can write to your local MP, as I think you suggested, wasn't it, that there's an ESOL?
Well, there's the ESOL action, what's it called? ESOL Action Group.
Action
Group.
Group.
And they have, they probably have a website. I'm on their listserv, but they probably have a website. You would know more than I do about that.
Do they have I just wanted to tell our listeners that they can do something about it.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's the ESOL Action Group. I don't unfortunately have the email address. And again, so they do a lot of lobbying work as well, and they do try their best to try and make the government see some sense in this matter.
But there are also a lot of organisations that provide different kinds of support and help to the local communities and advice around immigration, particularly in citizenship application processes. But if you want to, to give less of a glib answer about what the audience can do about being a good citizen, but I think it's also, it is about respecting and taking the time to listen to different points of view, whether
Absolutely.
it's interacting with your neighbor or what you read in the papers or watch on the news. Just take the time and recognize that people are struggling with at a number of different levels. So Adam's intervention earlier, saying, you know, that he found it offensive that the cross was covered, and you explained rightly that it wasn't because the cross was seen as an offense, it was because, you know,
it's an iconic.
It's an icon. It's a representation.
Okay.
So he's struggling.
Yeah,
you know,
he's struggling.
people have to. Everybody is trying
Sure,
to negotiate here, and we need to listen to what he was saying.
Not very good at that, I'm afraid. We're not very good at listening. I'm afraid time is up. But if you are a teacher and you have some time, contact me, because we have a project that is going to assist those people with ESOL classes. If you are a teacher and you can spare an hour or two to help our brothers and sisters who are in need, contact Ummat channel. We have a project that we will be running, and you can contact me. But until next week, look after yourself, look after your neighbor, whoever they may be, and inshallah we'll see you next week. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.